Chapter 591. Laboring for the Guild. With the boss battle settled, the players from Tyrannical Ambition began to leave Sword Peak Ravine. Zhang Yu still had his guard up, but everything went smoothly. Unrivaled Super Hottie left the place along with the group just like that. The players were very curious about Unrivaled Super Hottie. The 4th branch guild leader noticed that something was definitely off, and quietly walked over to Zhang Yu. How should I deal with Unrivaled Super Hottie? The 4th branch guild leader asked. He believed that the guild leader had some special plan in store. With Unrivaled Super Hottie's strength, he should at least have been one of the elite core members. Joining the main guild wouldn't have been a problem at all, but instead, he was exiled to a branch guild. Something fishy was going on. He might be Yi Chu. Zhang Yu hadn't openly shared his suspicions before because it had only been a baseless speculation, but with Unrivaled Super Hottie's performance displayed, and with the Pro League as bait, Zhang Yu was now very certain. Although there would be glory players who weren't interested in the Pro League, they were the minority. Unrivaled Super Hottie's firm decision added onto Zhang Yu's suspicion. Or rather, he no longer suspected the person. He was entirely sure of it. Ah, the 4th branch guild leader gasped. We don't know his goal yet, Zhang Yu continued, but since he wants to play, we'll play along with him. Huh, the 4th branch guild leader was puzzled. Even though he had never participated in the conflicts with God Yi Chu, he had heard all about them. The club guilds were a mess because of him. To have such a walking disaster be a part of his guild, the 4th branch guild leader felt his heartbeat increase. He began to feel nervous. Even though he definitely doesn't have good intentions, you've seen his strength. We could use him. When he joins your guild, send him to a random team. Use him for hard labor, Zhang Yu said. The 4th branch guild leader was amazed by Zhang Yu. He had the courage to use a god as a hard laborer. Their guild leader was too incredible. But you must pay close attention to him. Put him in a group with someone you trust. It'll make it easier to keep an eye on him. Zhang Yu had already put in a considerable amount of thought. Okay, I understand, the 4th branch guild leader nodded. Good, we'll leave it at that for now then, Zhang Yu said, while giving Unrivaled Super Hottie a warm greeting. Then, he took the main guild's troops and left. Only a fight for bosses could gather so many people in one place. Other activities, such as dungeon runs, were done according to the respective guilds. Zhang Yu and his group went far away until they couldn't no longer see Unrivaled Super Hottie. They were completely safe and sound. Only then could he relax. We'll feign ignorance, and let him work hard to gain our trust. He'll be a useful pawn, especially when it comes to competing for bosses, Zhang Yu told 3 Stones. Is it alright to bring him along? He didn't make any movements this time. Maybe his target wasn't Blade Master Lang Rui? It's quite possible, Zhang Yu nodded. I think he intends to infiltrate the upper layers of our guild to get first-hand information and then act when the time is right for a boss he needs. We'll need to be careful then. We'll do things like what we did today. He'll never be able to make off with the items dropped by the boss, said 3 Stones. I'm afraid that he might wreak havoc when he doesn't find any opportunities, Zhang Yu said. That would be scary. 3 Stones recalled the unparalleled destructive capabilities of Unrivaled Super Hottie. His heart was full of envy and jealousy. Who wouldn't want to be as majestic looking as him? 3 Stones glanced at the sword in his hand and sighed. He would never be as skilled. As a veteran knight, he could clearly see Unrivaled Super Hottie's mastery over the Maelstrom counterattack. With the players from the main guild were gone, only a few members of the branch guilds were left. Since this time's boss was special, elite knights and clerics of the branch guilds were present. Under normal circumstances, only the knights from the main guild were required. Brother, what next? The 4th branch guild leader inherited Zhang Yu's warmth and acted like he was concerned about Unrivaled Super Hottie. Nothing much, Unrivaled Super Hottie replied casually. I've got to recover my experience points. Ah, that's a must. How about finding a team to dungeon with? The 4th branch guild leader asked. Sure, Unrivaled Super Hottie replied. With some quick arrangements, Unrivaled Super Hottie was contacted by his new team members. See you later. Unrivaled Super Hottie said goodbye to the other members of the 4th branch guild and left with his new teammates. Guild leader, the 4th branch guild's number 1 knight, Flight, called out to his guild leader. Are there any special arrangements for Unrivaled Super Hottie? Flight tried this best to gain some insight on the situation. To put unrivaled super hottie in the 4th branch guild, there must be something wrong. Flight felt uncomfortable. He had always been looking for a chance to prove himself, but no knight would be able to outdo unrivaled super hottie's recent performance. We'll leave it at that. The 4th branch guild leader answered vaguely. It wasn't because he didn't trust Flight. It was due to the fact that he knew the person well. He knew that Flight was wary of unrivaled super hottie, and was reluctant to share such news with someone filled with negative emotions. Flight knew that his guild leader was intentionally dodging the question. He was anxious. With such a great knight around, he felt pressured. The players that had played with unrivaled super hottie would no longer think that Flight was good. Flight's worry was proven to be correct. Unrivaled super hottie was highly praised by his new party members, and the entire 4th branch immediately knew of the presence of the top-notch knight in their guild, even if he wasn't officially a part of their guild yet. When unrivaled super hottie officially joined the 4th branch guild of tyrannical ambition a few days later, his reputation was already very high. The celebratory welcome he received almost broke Flight's heart. "Boss Unrivaled, which dungeon do you want to run?" quite a few players asked impatiently. His name had already become Boss Unrivaled. People with true strength easily earned recognition from others. Although he held no official position, he already had the qualifications in the people's heart. "Haha, it doesn't matter, I'll go wherever I'm needed," unrivaled super hottie answered in a carefree manner. The guild members were full of joy. Happy Sheep's breakthrough with unrivaled super hottie's help made every team in the guild extremely jealous. As a result, in these past few days, all of the teams were asking their guild leader for unrivaled super hottie. Usually, team members were fixed and wouldn't be transferred so easily, but for an exceptional expert like unrivaled super hottie, why was he in that team? Why can't he be in ours? Thus, everyone demanded their guild leader for an answer. The 4th branch guild leader didn't object. Unrivaled super hottie was there for labor anyways. He let them contact unrivaled super hottie and indicated that unrivaled super hottie didn't belong to any fixed team. People were basically openly competing with each other for unrivaled super hottie's assistance. The guy himself didn't decline any invitation, and went into dungeons with different teams. With him officially in the guild, contacting him became even easier. The team leaders were swarming him with requests. F***CK, you guys already dungeoned with Boss Unrivaled a few days ago, piss off. **T, you dare to let Boss Unrivaled go into such a trash dungeon? D**MMIT, first come first serve, alright? We invited him first. My ass, look at the chat, I did it first. F***CK, ask Boss Unrivaled which dungeon he wants to go to. That doesn't count. D**MMIT, my words were indirect, but my intentions were clear. The guild chat erupted into chaos. Everybody was fighting for unrivaled super hottie's attention. Flight's heart was broken once again. He was lucky that the elite squad that he belonged to didn't beg for unrivaled super hottie's attention. Ha ha ha, everybody settle down. I'll go with the brothers that I've never dungeoned with before, unrivaled super hottie said. See, Boss Unrivaled has spoken. The rest of you, back off, someone immediately said. The ones, like Happy Sheep's team, backed off with some grumbling. The guild finally settled down after unrivaled super hottie declared his intentions. Chapter 592. Sharing the labor. Yi Shu spent most of his time on unrivaled super hottie. He didn't completely stop leveling Lord Grom, but if he had spent his time on Lord Grim instead, Lord Grim would have been around the level 60 threshold by now. Focusing on unrivaled super hottie, going into different dungeons with different parties, working hard as a tank, Chen Guo didn't know what Yi Shu could get out of doing these things. Chen Guo couldn't hold herself back and asked Yi Shu, but Yi Shu was talking loudly into the mic. He couldn't hear anything from Chen Guo. Yi Shu's unrivaled super hottie had originally been laying low. He rarely said anything, but with his strength already known, the person in charge of the team didn't dare to order him around. Out of necessity, Yi Shu had to take charge. With such an expert in charge, everybody on the team was happy to carry out his orders, especially since they achieved good results with Yi Shu leading. The name of Brother Unrivaled became more and more self-fulfilling. In the past few days, according to Chen Guo's observations, Yi Shu had gone into 22 different dungeons with 22 different parties, and all of them were 100-player dungeons. They always cleared them too. In terms of efficiency, Yi Shu's addition was astonishing. Tyrannical Ambition's fourth branch players was happy to reap the benefits. They had gained the upper hand in their competition against the other branch guilds. The other branch guilds weren't happy after learning the truth. They swarmed Zhang Yu, protesting unrivaled Super Hottie's presence in the fourth branch guild. Zhang Yu didn't expect that the guy would cause trouble even when he was used for hard labor. He couldn't help but feel impressed. Yi Shu really was a god. Everything he did got the attention of others. The leaders of the branch guilds were naturally Tyrannical Ambition's absolute core members. They were more trustworthy than the elites within the main guild. With their non-stop complaints, Zhang Yu had a meeting with them to tell them the truth. He's Yi Chu. No wonder. The branch guild leaders immediately understood after being exposed to the truth. Which is why he must have some ill intentions by joining Tyrannical Ambition. However, his motives remain hidden. For now, we're just using his strength to benefit ourselves, Zhang Yu explained. The branch guild leaders approved of Zhang Yu's plan. The idea of using their arch-nemesis as a work slave was very appealing. Even so, there's no reason that the fourth branch guild alone should keep him to themselves. We deserve a share too, don't we? The second branch guild leader said. Ha ha ha, we're on the same side. There's no need to make a fuss about it, the leader of the fourth branch laughed. He's in your guild, so of course you'd say that. The leader of the fifth branch guild rolled his eyes. He knew about Wolfhead's encounter with unrivaled Super Hottie. Even though he got bullied, they were still on the same side, so the option of revenge through petty tricks had gone out the window, but after learning the truth, he couldn't help but feel that the presence of Yi Chu was like a cheat engine for the fourth branch guild. It wasn't fair. It was like the fourth branch guild had started using a cheat engine, especially how their teams kept on making breakthroughs in the dungeons. With the members of the fourth guild acting high and mighty after their achievements, didn't they know that their success was achieved only because such a top-tier player? Zhang Yu wasn't angry at the situation. Instead, he laughed. Okay, there's no need to fight. Using Yi Chu as a slave for our guild is a good thing. It's a rare opportunity. Everybody should get to have some of the fun, so let's let him switch between branch guilds. With Zhang Yu making his stance clear, the leader of the fourth branch guild had nothing more to say. They were still people that considered more than obtaining benefits. Will he notice it if we overdo it? So what? It's nothing. If worse come to the worst, he'll just leave. We have nothing to lose, Zhang Yu replied, appearing to have given the issue a thorough amount of thought beforehand. Despite that, Zhang Yu had a bad feeling about his plan. Even though they had paid close attention to unrivaled Super Hottie, a god's movements weren't comprehensible by normal players. The other branch guild leaders agreed. With such a highly intelligent spy, so what if they treated him roughly? We don't expect anything from you, but since you're already here, we might as well use you to the fullest. The branch guild leaders began to argue about the distribution of their free labor. Since it was harmless, Zhang Yu didn't interfere and instead joined in on the fun. In the end, they voted for the third branch guild to use the cheat engine. Just 1 day? You're kidding me. How much can he do in 1 day? The leader of the third branch guild was furious when he learned that he was granted access to the cheating engine for only a day. Then how many days do you want him for? If you keep him for too long, and he left just like that, then won't we lose our source of fun? The leaders of the other branch guilds refuted. I'll at least keep him for as long as the fourth branch guild did. The leader of the third branch guild argued. In the end, no one was willing to compromise. There were a lot of branch guilds under the banner of Tyrannical Ambition. If all of them took turns, there might be a chance that there would be some that wouldn't get the chance to use the free labor. They didn't plan on treating him well. What if he just left after the first day? In the end, they completely got rid of the initial decision. They decided to let unrivaled Super Hottie choose whoever invited him. I have something to say about this, Zhang Yu said after they came to a conclusion. He has to do it on his own free will. Do not entice him with any conditions. Oh, the branch guild's leaders were momentarily stunned. If we competed against each other for his help, who would benefit from it in the end? Zhang Yu continued. The leaders of the branch guilds suddenly came to a realization. They immediately agreed to Zhang Yu's terms. Zhang Yu was finally relieved. He was alarmed by the decision of the branch guild leaders. He immediately suspected Yi Chu's real intention, throwing himself into their guild and invoking conflict within the guild as an elite that was sought after by everyone. How crafty. Luckily, I noticed it, Zhang Yu thought. Tyrannical ambition had made a decision. In the meantime, Yi Xie was becoming increasingly busy. With Zhang Yu's approval to use his strength, players other than the ones from the 4th branch guild were asking for his help. Even the ones from the main guild were looking for him. Zhang Yu didn't stop these activities. As long as none of them gave away any benefits. Anyone could use Yi Chu. After all, wasn't it all good for tyrannical ambition? Zhang Yu was extremely pleased with his arrangements with Yi Chu as the branch guilds made excellent progress in dungeons. Tyrannical ambition was involved with a few more conflicts for bosses during the past 2 weeks. Zhang Yu wanted to use him for free labor, but he held his impulsiveness back. He pondered over it and felt like he should use him to clear dungeons to the point where he gave up. Zhang Yu could never trust him when it came to killing bosses. However, even though Zhang Yu was reluctant to deploy his cheat engine, the other guilds weren't the same. Blossom Valley's Dazzling Spring was very popular at the moment. With his help, Blossom Valley was doing very well. The 3 great guilds couldn't gain an upper hand against Blossom Valley. Even at the momentous, Samsara was being suppressed. This player's unprecedented strength had garnered a lot of attention and was shrouded in rumors. Some said that he was Zhang Jiali, others claimed that the person was Zhou Yuan. Some even said that he was a new member of Team 100 Blossom that would take over Dazzling 100 Blossom and was playing in-game to train himself. There was even a rumor that the person was someone who had trained for years and joined Blossom Valley, ready to show his true strength. The rumors even went out of hand, but such an expert easily attracted attention of the pro teams. Many had tried to get in touch of this character. Yi Shu was one of them. He chatted with the person from time to time in QQ. "You've been busy these days, what are you planning on doing?" Yi Shu asked. "What about your work in tyrannical ambition?" Zhang Jiali answered with a question of his own. "I'm on official business," Yi Shu replied in a serious tone. "You were quite cooperative last time, seeing that you didn't expose my identity. What do you think? Are you interested in working together?" "Nah, I just didn't want to get in your way, seeing that you're putting quite a lot of effort into it," Zhang Jiali answered. "It's nothing. I'm enjoying it," Yi Shu said. "Oh really? That's good. How about you?" "Me, I'm in a bit of a dilemma," Zhang Jiali replied. "Is it really that hard of a choice to make? Join forces with me. We'll be the champions without a doubt," Yi Shu replied. "Sorry, that isn't one of my options," Zhang Jiali said. "You don't have much foresight," Yi Shu complained. "Foresight requires an investment in time. Do I have the time? I'm not like you," Zhang Jiali said. Chapter 593. Time decides aggro. Chen Guo paid a lot of attention to Zhang Jiali. With the presence of such a great god on their team, their strength would increase exponentially. This was why Chen Guo paid such careful attention to the interactions between Yi Shu and Zhang Jiali. She felt that something was wrong with their conversation. Zhang Jiali didn't seem to be interested in Yi Shu's proposal. Yi Shu's "I understand" made Chen Guo even more agitated. The most annoying phrases when eavesdropping on a conversation were "I understand" and "you know it." What do you understand? What did you know? People who used such words were too irresponsible. They didn't even care about the feelings of the eavesdroppers. What do you understand? Huh? Chen Guo was straightforward. She immediately asked Yi Shu after noticing that Yi Shu didn't attempt to persuade Zhang Jiali. What he meant was that even if he returns to the Pro League, he doesn't have much time in his career left. Since he wants to be the champion, of course he needs to cherish the time he has left. Joining a new team like us would be wasteful and luxurious, Yi Shu said. He said that he's different from you. What difference is there? Chen Guo asked. I've already won a championship. He has not, Yi Shu replied. Chen Guo immediately understood. For a new team like Team Happy to become the champion? Even Chen Guo felt that it was absurd despite having a god like Yi Shu. One didn't simply get to become the champion with just a god. The god chatting on the other side was the perfect example. The poor god was nearing the end of his career. If his goal was to be the champion, he would never join Team Happy. To Zhang Jiali, it was all or nothing, but for Yi Shu, he didn't share the same worry to a certain degree. What a shame, Chen Guo sighed. Yeah, he gave up on the chance to be a champion, Yi Shu sighed. Chen Guo responded absent-mindedly. Unlike Yi Shu, her confidence was an illusion. Even though a god was strong, it was the pro leagues they were talking about. Unlike the game, there were a lot of other gods. When she said, "What a shame," she just felt that it was pity they wouldn't be able to have another god join them, not what Yishu meant. "Good luck," Yishu said to Zhang Jiali. "Out of courtesy, I should wish you good luck as well, but your luck will mean my misfortune." "I'm in a bit of a dilemma," Zhang Jiali said. "Haha, I won't be back so soon. Cherish the 1 year you have left," Yishu replied. "If that's the case, then good luck to you as well." "Good luck." "Good luck." Yishu closed the chat window after the two exchanged blessings with each other and sighed. Even Yishu felt regretful being unable to get the help of another god. Back in the game, unrivaled Super Hottie was already being invited by hordes of players. Yishu appeared to be picking random parties, but Chen Guo had been observing him for quite some times and found something peculiar. "Hey, you've partied with this group before," Chen Guo said. Yishu had always been with different parties. It was the first time that he had gone dungeon running with the same party twice. Chen Guo thought that Yishu was confused after going into dungeons with so many different parties. "Yes, I know," Yishu unexpectedly answered. "Oh, you're going with them again?" Chen Guo started to study the party slowly. It was a small group from the Tyrannical Ambition's 7th branch. Chen Guo could not see anything special from their characters. They were just like any other group that Yishu had played with before. They were mediocre at best. "Why are you going with them a second time?" Just as Chen Guo was about to throw Yishu her question, unrivaled Super Hottie received a message. It was from Tyrannical Ambition's guild leader, Wandering Peak. Before sending the message, Zhang Yu was also in an awkward position. They had found a new boss. It was the LVL-70 North Bridge, Mage Mordak, which was badly needed by Tyrannical Ambition. However, for the past 3 weeks the boss had spawned, Tyrannical Ambition was unable to secure the boss. The first failure was from a fair and square competition against the other guilds, but for their second and third attempt, it was all because of the newly emerged expert called Dazzling Spring from Blossom Valley. Zhang Yu was highly criticized by the club's higher-up due to his failures. Even though they knew that there were a lot of uncertainties when it came to competitions for wild bosses, for a team that desperately needed a certain boss, the game department would still be under a lot of pressure. The manager even made it a point that the next boss must be secured at all costs. At all costs? Why don't you guys send a professional player or two to help out? Zhang Yu, of course, kept that complaint to himself. It might not be a good thing if the club sent a pro to aid Zhang Yu. His task would become easier, but it also meant that he had neglected his duty. As someone in charge of everything in the game, if he needed the aid of pro players to solve his problems, it meant that his capabilities were limited. Zhang Yu wished to overcome the problem on his own, unless the situation was very dire. With Dazzling Spring, who was suspected to be Zhang Jiali, on the enemy's side, it was indeed a dire situation. However, Zhang Yu also had a trump card. After giving it a lot of thought, he finally decided to deploy his trump card. If he needed pro players to solve his problem, his capabilities would be doubted, but if he could solve problems that would require help from pro players, it meant that he was very good at doing his job. The two factors were closely related to each other. Zhang Yu was never purely a player. To him, this was his career. He was happy to find that unrivaled Super Hottie was online after receiving news regarding the North Bridge Mage Mordak and immediately contacted him. Even though this person's aim was still unknown, judging from his willingness to act as hard labor in Tyrannical Ambition's branches, Zhang Yu knew that his summon would bear fruit. As expected, unrivaled Super Hottie happily accepted and immediately made his way over. Zhang Yu took this opportunity to review his troops. The competition for North Bridge Mage Mordak was tight. It was not because of the fact that the mage was tough. It was due to the fact that the area which he spawned in was quite small. Upstream of a certain river, there was a bridge known as the North Bridge. It was said to be one of the forgotten sites of the Great Road of Glory. Decaying with time, the North Bridge lost its original purpose. One could no longer cross the bridge without some incredible platforming skills. The bridge was already damaged beyond recognition. The only reason it still stood was because of the system's logic-defying settings. North Bridge Mage Mordak always spawned on the North Bridge. He didn't belong to any leveling areas. He was just a scenery boss. And how big could a bridge be? No matter where the North Bridge Mage Mordak spawned, he'd immediately be spotted by players. Competition for this boss was never limited to just 3 or 4 guilds. Any ambitious guild would arrive at the scene. As Zhang Yu was reviewing with his men, he believed that the other guilds were doing the same. Not long after, players from each guilds had already gathered on both ends of the bridge. After a brief calculation by Zhang Yu, about 10 club guilds had gathered. Herb Garden, Blue Brook Guild, Excellent Era, Samsara, Royal Style, Blossom Valley, Misty Castle, Void Walk, Howling Heights, and with the addition of Tyrannical Ambition, 10 guilds were present. The players at the bridge weren't too shocked. They had seen the same scene every week. If a boss was too hard to find, it would be very troublesome for players, but if a boss was spotted easily, the situation would not be any better for them either. For a rather easy boss, the high difficulty faced to secure it was because of his small spawn location. North Bridge Mage Modak levitated above the North Bridge. He was an old man with a white beard, but his body was still well built. There was a backstory about the old man that happened on the bridge. It was a sad and touching story, but the players that were at the place for the boss didn't care about the backstory. The only thing concerning them was how to get to the boss when surrounded by players from 9 other guilds on extremely unfavorable terrain. Nobody was willing to make a move. They were already used to the norm of watching silently. It was a disgusting practice that occurred once a week. A gunshot broke through the silence. Blossom Valley was the first to make their move. Or rather, Dazzling Spring from Blossom Valley. It was also a scene that people had become used to in the past 2 weeks. Dazzling Spring's unprecedented skill allowed him to approach the boss directly, unlike the other players. Dazzling Spring leapt onto the bridge. Gunshots rang out, accompanied by zipping bullets and flying hand grenades. The North Bridge Mage was already on the move. He was another boss that was very exquisite about the aggro's direction. There was also an extra condition to establishing his aggro, the person standing on the North Bridge. As long as somebody stood on the bridge, he would be a target for the North Bridge Mage's wrath. The longer a player stayed on the bridge, the higher the aggro value would be. It would be impossible to snatch the attention of the boss away from beyond the bridge. The deciding factor of pulling the North Bridge Mage's aggro was the amount of time one spent on the bridge. It was a very important factor, but it was also something that received the least attention of the guilds. To fight for an extended period of time on the North Bridge was not an easy feat. Simply passing the bridge required a very high amount of skill, not to mention fighting on it. With so many contenders, fighting on the North Bridge would only result in countless players falling into the water below. The situation completely changed with the presence of Dazzling Spring. Zhang Jiali was a god. He could ensure his own safety on the bridge without plummeting into the water. For the past 2 weeks, he was the first target of the North Bridge Mage's aggro. Chapter 594. The Lost Initiative. Dazzling Spring was the first to move. A scene like this was nothing new. This incident wasn't exclusive to the North Bridge Mage. Blossom Valley had actively competed for bosses for quite some time, and Dazzling Spring was the one who had always taken the initiative to start the boss fights. With such an expert in their midst, they were not afraid of anybody going after them. They seized the initiative easily. With 2 weeks of experience, the big guilds were already used to it. The moment they saw Dazzling Spring move, countless players reacted with anger. Their target was not the boss, but rather Dazzling Spring, who was the first to jump onto the bridge. To be able to secure the boss in the countless boss battles, it was the perfect group aggro attraction. The many large guilds gathered around shared the same hatred towards Dazzling Spring. As long as that person was there, the boss would be secured by Blossom Valley again. Tyrannical Ambition was the only guild that held back. Zhang Yu was actually more agitated than the rest, but without unrivaled super haughty, he didn't dare to make a move. Dazzling Spring stood at the top of North Bridge without worry, dodging attacks from all directions without much effort. The river was wide, one could see the former glory of the North Bridge that connected both banks of the river, just by observing its battered frame. Dazzling Spring stood at the highest point of the bridge, avoiding attacks from the melee classes. The remaining mid-ranged classes couldn't even reach Dazzling Spring once he reached the center of the bridge. If they stepped forward further, they would be on the North Bridge. Once they were on the North Bridge, they would trigger the aggro of the North Bridge Mage. Even though the North Bridge Mage's aggro was currently focused on Dazzling Spring, a boss with such special aggro mechanics would usually have volatile aggro. Even when his attacks were focused on Dazzling Spring, he would still launch surprise attacks towards other players based on the amount of time they had spent on the North Bridge. Players were already able to grasp the strategy after a long time of studying the boss's behavior. Under normal circumstances, the players would usually move in and out of the North Bridge to reset the time aggro, but an expert like Dazzling Spring totally ignored the aggro. He hopped left and right, continuously dealing damage to the North Bridge mage while taking the time to harass players from the other guilds. With the height that he was at, he had the advantage. The bullets shot by him and the grenades thrown by him would eventually drop to the ground, wouldn't they? Before the players could attack Dazzling Spring, they already suffered from his counterattack. With a surge in his APM, various types of grenades showered down like rain. A Spitfire's grenades would do more than just create explosions. They had a lot more uses. With his 100 Blossom style, the North Bridge was lit up with explosions that consumed several players at once. When the visual effects faded away, there were visibly less players left standing. Could he take out so many players with just a single combo? It was obviously impossible. But you had to also take note of the players left standing. They were all from Blossom Valley. They had acted according to Dazzling Spring's attacks, rampaging within the visual distraction created. They were immune to Dazzling Spring's attacks anyways. There were no allies among the 10 guilds. The players from Blossom Valley hid in the visual distractions created by Dazzling Spring, while creating the same visual distraction wherever they went. They performed the 100 Blossom style as a team. The visual effects expanded non-stop, swallowing everything in its path. Within moments, the players from Blossom Valley had taken control of the North Bridge. The North Bridge mage was busy attacking Dazzling Spring with his spells. The bosses couldn't be distinguished using conventional means. Despite using the combat style of a witch, the boss didn't fly around on a broom like a witch usually would. He instead flew around with only his magical staff. There was, however, still a limit to his flying duration. The North Bridge mage landed on a vantage point and threw fireballs at Dazzling Spring. Dazzling Spring leapt into the air, dodging each and every one of the boss's attack. With his superior geographical advantage, he looked down on the battlefield with a bird's-eye view. The players of Blossom Valley had already rushed towards the boss and began to attack. The players from the big guilds coughed up blood. Wasn't this a reenactment of last week's battle? They knew clearly what would happen if they dared to charge onto the scene. Dazzling Spring would immediately shower them with attacks. They didn't doubt Dazzling Spring's capability in suppressing the area. His 100 Blossom style was designed to mess up his opponent's vision. The ability to see was the most important aspect in a place such as the North Bridge. If one lost one's vision, combat would be impossible. The person might even fall into the river by mistake. The only difference with last week was that the players from the big guilds were actually on the offensive. However, they were cleared away by Dazzling Spring's counterattacks with the cooperation of Blossom Valley's players. "We shouldn't have even let him get on the bridge," a player shouted, tears streaming down his cheeks as he looked 45 degrees upwards at Dazzling Spring. "Everyone, be careful, we must get there no matter what," another player shouted, but none of them moved. The players from the big guild stood outside the bridge, looking left and right. At this time, they were hoping that somebody else would step forward and act as cannon fodder. Of course, who would be so dumb as to voluntarily serve as cannon fodder? Obviously no one would. Which was why they could do nothing but stand aside and watch. The players from the large guilds were bleeding in their hearts. Zhang Yu was especially worried, and he immediately sent a message to Unrivaled Super Hottie and urged him to move faster. "Aren't I already here?" Unrivaled Super Hottie replied. Zhang Yu looked around and spotted a group of players walking towards him along the riverbank. When they were close, Zhang Yu noticed that Unrivaled Super Hottie was really there, but he wasn't alone. He brought along the team that he was in with him. A normal team in one of their branch guilds couldn't even clear a dungeon properly. Against a wild boss, not to mention competing with players from other guilds, even if there were no other outside factors, they might not even be able to handle the boss. Why did he lead all those people here? Zhang Yu was confused, and he could hear Unrivaled Super Hottie's voice among the approaching players. "Look, the one throwing fireballs from the top of the bridge. That's the boss, North Bridge Mage Morlar." "Oh." The players in his team shouted in amazement. Even though there were not noobs in the heavenly domain, wild bosses were something that not everybody had the chance to encounter. It was an entirely new experience for them. That person that is dodging the fireballs non-stop seems to be the boss's aggro target. Oh, he seems to be a Spitfire. He has a very big advantage in controlling the entire field from that position. He can use the special geographical condition of the bridge to stop hostile players from getting onto the bridge, Unrivaled Super Hottie continued. But he has to deal with the boss. It must be hard, a player pointed out. Of course, look, there are other players trying to get onto the North Bridge, Unrivaled Super Hottie pointed out. Before they could spot the players, Unrivaled Super Hottie sighed, "Ah, he's a sly one, jumping to that spot. He's trying to get rid of them by using the boss." The fireballs launched by the North Bridge mage missed Dazzling Spring and dropped onto the players who were attempting to get on the bridge. They were immediately scattered by the boss's attack. The boss's attacks weren't like Dazzling Spring's visual distraction, but the boss's attacks had high damage, so they had no choice but to dodge. However, they couldn't dodge the attacks like they usually did on a flat surface, they had to jump. In their moment of panic, quite a number of them tumbled into the river below. In the gushing stream, the players floated for a few moments and disappeared under the water's surface. The average players were never good in controlling their characters in the water, falling into such a fast-flowing stream added to the difficulty. To make it back to the riverbank alive depended entirely on their luck. While some dropped into the water, others were showered by the boss's attack. Suffering a direct hit would take away a large percentage of a player's HP, if not instant death. A few grenades from Dazzling Spring cleared away the rest of the players from the bridge. Tisk 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 tisk, Unrivaled Super Hottie sighed, while Zhongyu moved his wandering peak closer to him. "Is that Dazzling Spring?" Unrivaled Super Hottie asked. "Yes," said Zhongyu, "but the boss is called Mordak, not Morlar." "Oh, it's been quite a while, I've forgotten the name." "Dazzling Spring has taken the initiative." "It's tough," Zhongyu said. "It is. Why did you not call me earlier?" Unrivaled Super Hottie said. "I notified you as soon as possible." Zhongyu was helpless. "Brother, you're the one who was late. Since the initiative belongs to him, it's quite hard to turn the situation around," Unrivaled Super Hottie said. "What now?" "I need cover and some support." "It's all on you." Zhongyu didn't hesitate. Calling him here was to use his strength to the fullest. There was only one rule: he must never be allowed to be the leader of the team. Zhongyu immediately sent Unrivaled Super Hottie an invite, but the system notified him that he was already in a team. "Add me," Zhongyu said. And he immediately received an invite from Unrivaled Super Hottie. Tears streamed down his cheeks. "What I meant was to join my team," Zhongyu explained. He must secure the spot of team leader. The fact that Unrivaled Super Hottie could send him an invite meant that he must at least be a sub-leader within the team. Zhongyu had a bad feeling about it. "Oh okay," Unrivaled Super Hottie replied. He left his team and requested to join Zhongyu's. Zhongyu accepted the request. After confirming that Unrivaled Super Hottie was only a normal member of the team, he then added his guild's elites to the team. "What do we do?" Zhongyu asked. "I'll take out Dazzling Spring and drag the boss to the edge of the bridge. We'll take care of him there," Unrivaled Super Hottie replied.